Our next reading is Understanding Balance Sheets. And these are the learning outcome statements, I think total of 8. So let us discuss them briefly, all of these one by one. Starting first with the first LOS, describe the elements of the balance sheet, that is assets, liabilities and equity. Balance sheet is known by many names. It's sometimes called the statement of financial position, and a loosely constructed balance sheet is called statement of affairs or just balance sheet. So balance sheet is basically sheet of balances giving you details about two types of specific information: the different resources owned and controlled by the organization, and the financing structure, that is the resources are funded through some sources, some sources of finance. So what are those finances sources? So basically balance sheet shows your resource structure and financing structure. When you say resources, means these are the assets. Assets are companies' economic resources and only recognized when they are expected to bring future economic benefits. Assets are the economic resources from which a firm expects to receive economic benefits in the future. Of course, all of you know they can be then further split into long-lived assets and current assets. Then liabilities. Liabilities are obligations that a firm will have to settle in the future date, or it's just simply obligations owed by an entity or a firm. Then what is equity? Equity is the difference between assets and liabilities. It's called stockholders' equity, shareholders' equity. It is the residual interest. Residual interest means if the accounting equation can be rearranged this way, assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. If we rearrange this equation, equity is equal to assets minus liabilities. So subtracting all of the liabilities from assets, what remains is called the residual interest. This residual interest is called equity, right? So these are the three elements. We'll discuss these in detail in our later slides. The next LOS says describe uses and limitations of the balance sheet in financial analysis. First use is that we can assess firm's liquidity. Liquidity is the firm's ability to pay its current obligations when they fall due. It is assessed by comparison between current assets and current liabilities. We'll discuss this in our specific reading analysis. We will also discuss some liquidity ratios in today's lecture. So we will also be able to assess firm's liquidity using the balance sheet. This is the first use. We can also assess a firm's solvency. Liquidity is the firm's ability to pay its short-term obligations when they fall due, and solvency is the firm's ability to pay its long-term obligation. Liquidity measures the ability to pay short-term obligation. Solvency measures the business ability to pay long-term obligations, and both of these can be assessed using balance sheet. And also the ability to make distributions to the shareholders. Remember, the distribution to the shareholders is made out of retained earnings, and retained earnings are reported as a part of statement of changes in equity, and all these are available from the balance sheet. So these are the specific areas that a financial analysis makes use of from the balance sheet. Now, what are the limitations? The first limitation is that there are many valuation bases. Some assets are measured at historical cost. Most of the assets, long-lived assets under the US GAAP, are required to be reported at original historical cost, less accumulated depreciation and impairment. We'll discuss it in detail in our long-lived assets in a separate reading. So historical cost basically is the value that was exchanged at the date of acquisition, the original amount that is verifiable through audit, objective number present in the balance sheet for which we have appropriate records. The second measurement base could be fair value. Fair value basically is an amount at which knowledgeable, willing parties like A and B, they are ready to exchange their assets and liabilities in an arm's length transaction. There is a specific definition for fair value. Standard costs, it is discussed in much more detail in cost management in CMA. Standard costs are basically targeted costs or predetermined costs for material, labor, variable overheads and fixed overheads. So some items are reported at historical cost, some at fair value, Some items in your inventory, your finished goods and work in process might be reported at standard cost. So there are so many measurement bases, and this is one of the limitations of balance sheet. Some might be reported at market value, some at their intrinsic value, which is called true or inherent value. So there is a mixture of values, and that is something that could be confusing for analysts. And every item has a certain reason and rationale why it is reported on historical cost, why rationale. We'll discuss in detail as we go along, discussing inventories and long-lived assets in our later readings. So the number of assets and liabilities that do not appear, this is also a limitation. Maybe firm's employees are very hardworking, firm has very good research base, firm has good reputation, it has long-term viability in certain projects that can make firm very valuable in the future. Unfortunately, all these things cannot be monetized, they cannot be expressed in monetary terms, so they are not reported on the balance sheet. This is also one of the limitations of balance sheet, that it does not recognize all the assets that may be beneficial for the organization. Next, LOS is describe alternative formats of balance sheet presentation. A balance sheet may be presented in an account format or report format. This is the account format. This is an old one, no longer used in current financial reporting. Your assets and liabilities and equities, they are given side by side like a T account, representing this is the debit side, this is the credit side. So it's an account format indicating assets, non-current, current, they are debited, and liabilities and equity, they have a credit balance. So this is an old-fashioned approach called the account format, but this is the format we use now. This is the report format. Assets, liabilities, they are reported in one column. This is what you would frequently see in published financial statements. When we say classified balance sheet, or it means classified balance sheet segregates current assets and long-lived assets, and between liabilities, current liabilities are reported separately and non-current. This is the classified one, where we have current assets reported separately, non-current assets, long-term assets reported separately, just like liabilities at the same time are reported in the form of current and non-current. This is called classified balance sheet. Next, LOS is distinguish between current and non-current assets, current and non-current liabilities. Assets can be segregated into current and non-current. When we say a current asset, it means an asset like inventory, your prepayments, your account receivables, your banks, your different types of inventories, work in process, finished goods, raw materials. So current assets, they are either converted into cash, either they are sold, or they are consumed, used up in the normal operating cycle of a business. What is an operating cycle? Operating cycle is the time that it takes to take in the raw material, convert them into finished goods, selling it to the account receivable, and finally collecting the money from them. So it's the whole process from taking the material, selling it, and finally collecting the money from customer. This is called your operating cycle. So when you define current assets are defined as the assets which are either sold, converted to cash, or used up within the operating cycle, or 1 year, whichever is longer. 12 months or operating cycle, whichever of these is longer. Let's say my operating cycle is 18 months. So the assets were either converted to cash, sold, or used up. My criteria would be 18 months. Whichever of these is longer or greater. Let's say if my operating cycle is 9 months or 8 months, for example, it takes me 8 months to convert my goods into cash by selling it on credit. So it means 8 months versus 12, the greater is 12 now. So any asset that is sold, used, or converted to cash within 12 months will be considered as a current asset. Remember, so you have to compare your operating cycle or 12 months, whichever is greater, it is considered as a base to determine whether the asset is designated as a current asset or a non-current asset. And conversely speaking, the asset which is not a current asset will be a long-lived asset, or in IFRS terminology called non-current assets. Then liabilities are also further subdivided into current and non-current. The current liability means the liability or obligation that will be settled within 1 year or operating cycle, whichever is longer. Same way. And the liabilities which are not current are designated as non-current liability. So IFRS requires this current and non-current formats unless liquidity-based presentation may be more relevant for some organizations. Like banking institutions, they give their financial statements in liquidity formats from the assets and liabilities are reported based upon liquidity rather than this classified arrangement in which we segregate between current and non-current. So we'll discuss this in our later slides as in MCQs as well. So your next reading is describe different types of assets and liabilities and the measurement basis of each. Current assets: cash and cash equivalents, marketable securities. There is a separate reading for this. Let us briefly discuss marketable securities. Marketable securities, I think we have a separate slide for it as well. I think we do have. So marketable securities could either be held for trading, or they might be held till maturity. In that case, it will be considered as a long-term asset or a long-lived asset, or it could be available for sale. They are all treated differently. If a certain security, a debt security, an equity security has been designated as a held for trading, I think we have it in this separate slide. Yes, these are all here: market, held for trading, and available for sale. Discuss this later. So we will discuss how to report these later, marketable securities, in the next slide. How do we report account receivables? Account receivables are reported at NRV. What is NRV? NRV means gross receivables minus an estimation for allowance for uncollectible accounts. Well, let's say we have $100,000 of account receivable, and out of them we suspect that maybe 2,000 might not pay. So we will report these account receivables at their NRV, gross amount, minus allowance for uncollectible account. The difference, 98,000, will be reported as your net receivables. For inventories, we have a separate reading. Under the IFRS and under the US GAAP, we have separate treatments of inventories. Under the IFRS, we use just cost versus NRV. We take cost and NRV, whichever is lower, that is considered as the reporting base on the balance sheet under the IFRS. US GAAP has two separate treatments. If the inventory is LIFO based or retail method, it's all coming in your reading inventory. Every single question will be done related to your inventory. So US GAAP inventory, if it is on LIFO or retail method, it has a separate valuation rule called LCM rule. We'll discuss in much more detail there. And all the other methods, whether FIFO, weighted average, all other methods, we use the NRV method. So remember, under IFRS, inventories are measured at cost or NRV, whichever is lower. And under the US GAAP, if the inventory has original cost in LIFO or retail method, they are valued using LCM rule. This is very different from NRV rule. And if the inventory has other basis, then we use the NRV rule, same cost versus NRV, whichever is low. We'll discuss in detail as we go along. It's just an overview. We'll discuss in the specific reading. Current liabilities have accounts payable, notes payable to be settled within 1 year, current or operating cycle, whichever is greater. Current portion of long-term debt, we have a long-term debt and some part of it is payable within 12 months or operating cycle, whichever is greater. Accrued liabilities mean wages payable, taxes payable, your rent payable, or certain obligations to be settled related to your operation within the current period. Then non-current assets, property, plant and equipment has a complete reading coming your way. I think there are total 67 questions in long-lived assets just in your Kaplan alone. Every single question will be done. Their depreciation, how we treat them. So property, plant and equipment under the US GAAP is reported at original historical cost. We will also discuss how IFRS treats property, plant and equipment. Investment property is treated differently under IFRS. It is treated differently under the US GAAP. We'll discuss it in detail. Deferred tax assets is when there is a difference between your accounting profit and taxable profit. When your accounting profit is more or less than the tax profit, it will result in either deferred tax assets and deferred tax liability. This will be discussed in a separate reading. Income taxes, everything is coming your way. Then intangible assets. When we say intangible assets, mean the assets which do not have their physical existence. Goodwill, patents, copyrights, etc., licenses, how they are valued, how do we amortize them, which intangibles are impaired, all are coming. It's just an overview. Then held to maturity securities. Bonds that you have held for certain till maturity, these bonds are reported at amortized cost. It's coming in the next slide. And there's a separate reading covering these areas as well. So we will discuss, just since we just need an overview of balance sheet, every element in this will be covered in the later slides and the later readings. Long-term liabilities are financial liabilities related to the bonds that you might have issued or other financial commitments to be settled in the longer period. Then deferred tax assets versus deferred tax liability relates to the assets and liabilities that arise because of the difference between your accounting income and the taxable income. So these differences, how are they treated, how is it calculated, all coming in your later reading. So don't worry. Next, same reading, little extended for marketable securities. Marketable securities are contracts that give rise to both a financial asset if you have purchased them, or it could be a financial liability if we have issued. If we have issued bonds or preferred stock, redeemable or derivatives, they will be represented as a financial liability. How are they reported? If it is measured at cost, let's say if we have made investment in an unlisted stock. Unlisted stock doesn't fall under AFS, HFT or any other categorization, so it has to be reported at cost. Or any loans made to other entities, they are measured at cost. They are represented as an asset. Now, if you have bonds, you have issued bonds. Bonds are reported at amortized cost. There is a separate reading for non-current liabilities, and we will discuss in detail how the bonds are amortized, what is the issuance at premium and discount, how the premium is amortized, how the discount is amortized, how we show the net value of the bond at the balance sheet, the amortized value. It's all coming. Remember, bonds, debts are reported at amortized cost. What is amortized cost? It's the difference between your issue price and principal payment plus any amortized discount and amortized premium. It will be discussed in much more detail in a separate reading. Just remember, the debt is reported at amortized cost, and all is coming in this reading. You don't have to calculate amortization or the value of the bond to be reported on the balance sheet. So this is just an overview. Then mark to market, held for trading securities. If a company has purchased a debt or equity instruments, and while buying them they have designated as held for trading, such securities are reported at fair value. So remember, what our prime concern is that certain securities which are unlisted are reported at cost, bonds are reported at amortized cost. That's what you need to know right now. What is done with bonds and HFT and AFS coming your way in the later slides. So held for trading, bonds and equity securities are reported at fair value. Means their value keep on changing. So at the balance sheet, when the value changes, how do we report this change? Any unrealized gain and loss because of the change in these held for trading securities, this gain and loss is reported as a part of income statement. Amortize the bonds that have been issued. The market price is irrelevant for the asset, for the bonds. But if held for trading bond debts or held for trading equities, if their market value changes, this market value change is reported as a part of your income statement. We'll discuss in detail. Then we have available for sale. If the investment is not categorized as amortized at held till maturity, this is called held till maturity, or if it is not classified as held for trading, if none of these categorization is decided by the firm, then eventually it is treated as available for sale. It is treated separately. So held for sale, these are the bonds and redeemable preferred stock that is neither designated as held for trading, and these bonds have not been designated as held till maturity. So such securities are reported at fair value, but their gain and loss, the fair value gain and loss, the balance sheet date, this is reported at the gain and loss. It is reported not in income statement, rather in other comprehensive income. Just a quick overview. Unlisted stock is reported at cost on the balance sheet. That's what you need to know. I don't want to go in detail. The debt is reported at amortized cost, which is expected to be held till maturity, HTM. The securities, debt or equities designated at the date of acquisition as HFT, held for trading purposes, any fair value gain and loss, up and down price at the balance sheet date, it is reported as a part of your income statement. Of course, interest and dividend received on such instrument is considered as a part of income statement. There is no other treatment. But it's the fair value on HFT, change in fair value, unrealized gain and loss, it is reported as a part of income statement. For these, fair value is irrelevant. For available for sale securities, any gain or loss on fair value remeasurement, it is reported as a part of other comprehensive income. And if we receive any interest on such AFS securities or any dividend, it is reported as a part of income statement. Of course, interest and dividend is an income, will be reported as a part of income statement. So it's all coming later, just an overview needed because we have questions that will require this understanding. Next is describe different types of assets and liabilities and the measurement basis of each. Goodwill. Goodwill arises, internally generated goodwill is not permitted to be reported on the balance sheet. Goodwill on acquisition is to be reported. What is acquisition? Let's say if FTC Incorporated acquires 70% of company X Incorporated. So we might have paid some consideration to acquire X Incorporated. Since my holding is more than 50%, and in acquiring the 70%, I have paid just, let's say, $1 million. But the asset acquired are just, let's say I've acquired 100%. Let's not confuse it with the non-controlling interest. I have acquired 100% of X Incorporated. The net value of the fair value of the assets and liabilities, the net fair value is, let's say, 0.8 million. I acquired this business for 1 million, whereas the net worth of this business, fair value of assets minus fair value of liabilities, the net fair value of assets and liability is just 0.8 million. I am being forced to pay 1 million for a business that has net fair value of 0.8 million. So this difference of 0.2 million is called goodwill. Simplest term. Let us involve some non-controlling interest also. Let's say if I acquired 70% of a business by paying a certain amount of money and 30% I couldn't acquire. 70% that I hold is called controlling interest. The 30% stock, block of stock that I couldn't purchase, it is called the non-controlling interest. How do we calculate goodwill in this case? Please write down the formula. Goodwill is calculated this way. Goodwill is equal to consideration paid. Consideration paid. Please note it down. You need it in for the questions. Consideration paid plus fair value of non-controlling interest at the date of acquisition. When we acquired this business, what was the fair value of non-controlling interest at the date of acquisition? What have consideration paid means you could have paid cash or bonds or any other valuable. It's not necessarily that acquisition is done through cash only. So we use a word that covers different types of payments. So we call it consideration paid. Could be bonds, cash, shares of your own company, a combination thereof. So consideration paid, what you have paid to acquire 70%, plus fair value of non-controlling interest, minus fair value of assets, minus fair value of liabilities at the date of acquisition. All these at the date of acquisition. Non-controlling interest, fair value at the date of acquisition, fair value of assets of the business you acquired at the date of acquisition, and fair value of liabilities at the date of acquisition. If you have these three things, fair value of non-controlling interest, fair value of assets, fair value of liabilities at the balance sheet date, just adjusted with your consideration paid, you will calculate your goodwill. It's an intangible asset and it is only recognizable if it arises because of a business acquisition. Otherwise, internally generated goodwill is not allowed to be incorporated in the books of accounts. So what an analyst should do, analyst should eliminate goodwill for comparability purpose. Intangible asset that has been generated just because of the acquisition of a company B by company A. So it needs to be eliminated. Why? I'll discuss in detail in our financial statement analysis later on. Then we have intangible, internally created intangibles like some patents registered with the Patent Registration Authority. So internally created intangibles. Under the US GAAP, any research and development cost incurred for generating an intangible asset, it is expensed as incurred. Research stage is different and development stage is different. Research stage is when an effort is being made to acquire some new knowledge about a product or a process or anything or activity. It's the research stage. Once the knowledge has been acquired and it is being developed for the market to make it, market savvy means in order to bring it to the market, the expenses now incurred to develop it into a viable product, those expenses are called the development expenses. So under the US GAAP, research and development both are expensed when incurred. They are never capitalized. But under the IFRS, research expenses incurred at the research stage in order to gain some preliminary knowledge, they are expensed. Once the product has been, or what you can say, the knowledge has been acquired and now it needs to be developed into a viable product, the later expenses can be capitalized provided certain criteria is met. There are 6 conditions we'll discuss later. Those 6 conditions will have to be met, all of them, then the development stage can be capitalized. So just an overview, all these things we are just going through will be discussed later in our studies. So the point to remember, internally generated intangibles, they are expense. All R&D related to intangibles is expensed. But in IFRS, research cost is expensed, development cost can be capitalized if 6 specific conditions are met. We'll discuss much more in detail. Then we have described the components of shareholder equity. We'll discuss it in our previous lecture also. These are the components of shareholders' equity. Retained earning, equity is not a single account. Equity exists in different forms. Retained earning, other comprehensive income accumulated, common stock, additional paid-in capital, all these are components of equity, and we will discuss it later in our separate readings. So further, authorized shares. Let's say a company has been registered with SEC and it is authorized to issue 100,000 shares. This is the maximum number of shares the company can issue, out of which we have issued 80,000 shares. These are called issued shares. Later on, company purchased 10,000 shares as a treasury stock. So we are authorized to issue 100,000 shares. Out of this, 80,000 have been issued, and later on we purchased 10,000 shares from the market. Now, how many shares are outstanding? Issued minus treasury stock. Outstanding shares is equal to the issued, and out of these, those that have been bought back and not yet cancelled, they are called outstanding. So treasury stock are the stock or the shares that the company purchases from the market for certain reasons. Why a company would do so, we'll discuss it later. And treasury stock, it is reported as a contra equity. It is reported as a negative equity because, as you can see, all these are items, are credit items. Treasury stock is a debit item, so it is shown as a deduction, as unallocated deduction from your equity. And we will discuss about this later slides. Then preferred stock is also part of total equity. And finally, non-controlling interest. In the previous example, we discussed that if you acquire 70% of a company's share capital and 30% you couldn't acquire, this 30% is called the non-controlling interest. And this non-controlling interest is reported as a part of statement of change in equity of a group balance sheet. Remember, in the consolidated financial statements, non-controlling interest representing that 30% stock you couldn't buy, this non-controlling interest is reported as a part of statement of changes in equity. And then finally we have the second last LOS, convert balance sheet to common size balance sheet and interpret common size balance sheets, vertical and horizontal as well. So let's say we want to compare two businesses and they are of unequal size. So what we do, we take the total assets or total liabilities and equity as a base, and we express every number as a percentage of the total assets. 6.9, cash is 6.9 of total assets, account receivable 27.7% of total assets. So every number on the balance sheet is expressed as a percentage of total assets, or on this side, total liabilities and equity. Since they are the both same, so you can say that every number on the balance sheet is expressed as a percentage of total assets. Now this makes comparison much more easier. We can see that this firm, Business 2, has comparatively more proportion of cash compared to Business 1, and we can see that this Business 2 has less investment in long-term assets compared to Business 1, because for Business 1, 64% of the assets represent long-term or long-lived asset. For this firm, almost less than half. So this is called a vertical common size analysis because we are expressing every number as a percentage of total assets. It could be horizontal as well. And what about horizontal one? We take a certain year as a base, like 2020 could be a base. We have our current assets, our long-lived assets, our equity, our current liability and non-current liability. And the next year, 2021, 2022, each number for the later years is expressed as a percentage of the base current assets. In this case, every number will serve as a base for the preceding years, the years that follow. For 2021, 2022, current assets in 2021, let's say current assets in 2020 are 10,000, and here in 2021 they are 12,000. So they will be represented as 120% of the base current assets. So every number in the following year's balance sheet will be expressed as a percentage of the base year. This is called the horizontal common size analysis. It could be given in any way. So you will have a base year and the following year's numbers will be based upon these percentages. This is called the horizontal common size analysis. Then finally, calculate and interpret liquidity and solvency. When we say liquidity, liquidity is a firm's ability to pay its current obligation as they come due and thus remain in the business. It is calculated by comparing your current assets and current liabilities. Current assets versus current liabilities. How much size, or what's the size of your current assets compared to your current liability? There are many various formulas we'll discuss later. So liquidity ratios, we'll see, they measure the ability of the firm to pay the current liabilities as they fall due. There are primarily 4 types of liquidity ratios. Current ratio, that is current assets upon current liability. Current assets are what fraction of current liability? This will help us assess the business comfort with which it can pay its current liability as they fall due. Unfortunately, we have inventory and account receivables and certain assets available in current assets which are not easily convertible to cash. We can make this ratio more conservative by deducting our inventories and prepayments, because inventories sometimes are hard to convert in cash, prepayments are never converted to cash. So deducting your inventories balances and your prepayments from your current assets will give you what you call the quick assets. So dividing quick assets with your current liability is called the quick ratio, or sometimes called the asset test ratio. It is more conservative measure than current ratio because we have excluded these items which are little harder to convert in cash. Sometimes account receivables are not easily collectible. So we can simply consider our assets which are cash and cash equivalent, cash and marketable securities upon current liabilities. In other words, we exclude inventories, prepayments, account receivables. We only take cash and marketable securities and express it as a fraction of current liability. It is one of the most conservative ratios. Current asset upon current liabilities, current assets minus inventory minus prepayment upon current liabilities, even conservative, and current assets minus account receivables minus inventory minus prepayments upon current liability. It is the even more conservative. The problem with these 3 ratios is that they are static. Current assets at the balance sheet date, current liability at the balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet, balance sheet. I haven't yet seen the business cash generating capacity. For this, we have a much better ratio called the cash flow ratio. We have 3 types of cash flows: cash flows from operations, cash flows from investing, cash flow from financing. So we are talking about cash flow ratio. So which ratio do you think would be the most suitable to be expressed as a fraction of current liabilities? Yes, cash flow from operations divided by current. This is a more dynamic ratio, that how much cash has been generated and it is what fraction of current liabilities. It is a much better measure to assess the company's cash generating capacity with reference to current liabilities. So we'll see all of these briefly in our MCQs, and they will be discussed much more in detail in our ratio analysis later in the later slides. So these are the ratios we use to measure liquidity: current ratio, quick ratio, cash ratio, and cash flow ratio. We have solvency ratios as well. Solvency ratios comparatively are the ratios that measure the business ability to pay long-term debts. Liquidity ratios measure the business ability to pay current obligations. Current obligation is measured through liquidity, the ability to pay current obligation, and ability to pay long-term obligation, it is measured through solvency. And these are the 4 ratios. Total debt to total capital. When you say total debt, it means total liabilities. Total liability is what fraction of or what percentage of total capital. When you say total capital, it means total capital employed, that is total liabilities, which is in the numerator, plus total equity. Total liability upon total equity plus total liabilities. When we say debt to equity ratio, it means you're talking about total liabilities. It's what fraction of total equity. Long-term debt to equity ratio, that is long-term debt or non-current liabilities upon equity. And finally, debt to total assets ratio. Debt to total assets ratio is equal to total debt, current and non-current combined. When I say total debt or total liability, it means current and non-current both, divided by total assets. Now, just look at these ratios. We know the accounting equation assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. If we are talking about total assets, we are talking about total liabilities and total equity. So total liability and total equity is in the numerator here, and total assets are in the denominator here. Both are in the denominator, total liabilities and total equity, and here we have total assets. Effectively, these two ratios are the same. They are absolutely the same. Just there is a difference in denominator. Here we have total liabilities upon total liabilities plus total equity, but here we have total liabilities, total debt upon total assets. This single number is the sum of these two. So effectively, these two ratios are the same. So we will be just skimming through these ratios in our questions today, but they are coming in much more detail in our later readings. So this completes your reading, understanding balance sheet.